So we're here with a Black Ops 7 meta video. I'm gonna go ahead and go over the stats for the various categories, which I'm gonna link near the top of the description. So you'll be able to bookmark that, and we'll keep that updated as the year progresses. And I wanted to kind of make sure I leveled a bunch of the weapons before I had an opportunity to put the video out, and then you get the builds and stuff like that. I think there's only one gun in here that I need to level up just a little bit more, but I'll point that out when we get to that section. So what I've done for Black Ops 7 is I've separated the weapons by their individual categories. We have the standard rifles or assault rifles, the Peacekeeper AK, X9 Maverick, DS20, as so on, and you can see the various categories. And this is when they add new weapons, I'll just go ahead and add a line, and then you'll be able to see that, and then I'll sort it by whichever category I think is probably the most important. Here's kind of how it is as follows. So up close, you can see that the TTK isn't particularly good on the Peacekeeper. It's okay, it's kind of right in the middle. Maverick comes out a little bit ahead depending on how you challenge your gunfights. If you focus them more for medium range, close range, or you're really holding an angle at a more long range, you're going to go ahead and kind of lean towards whichever one's stronger. And even on here, it is a little bit misleading at times because the MXR is one of those guns where it kind of has a slower TTK because of slower fire rate. But on the flip side, if you manage to get the headshot and you're pretty accurate, the TTK will actually even be faster than this. So it can feel like it's trash sometimes and better than others, depending on how straight you're shooting, especially with the aim assist nerf. Then we got the SMGs, and you can see the RK9 comes out there, but its damage drop off is only 9 meters. So you might want to try and compensate for that by putting on a little bit more range attachments. I think that's what's led a lot of people to a laser that increases your range. But on top of that, you can see kind of where the drop off is. So that's why in general, the SMGs haven't been that good in multiplayer. Besides probably the Dravec being the front runner for the SMGs, they've been mostly bad because of this 9-ish, 10-ish meters drop off compared to the rifles that are going to go up to 15, 30, 40 meters even, with faster TTKs that are going to be able to compete the damage drop off. So SMGs, definitely got to play them like SMGs. And then when it comes to the LMGs, you can see they're pretty decent up close. Even insane that if you ADS, you're killing as fast as the Razor, the MPC 25. These ones only go up to 12 or 9 meters versus the 36 to 41 meters that we're getting with the LMGs. So they're probably going to have to tweak some stuff there. We'll kind of see how that goes. And then the Velox, the Coda, and the Jaeger. The Jaeger being the slowest there. Coda being okay, but the Velox 6 meters, and the fall off is pretty extreme. So outside of 6 meters, you're getting a much worse TTK all the way up to 20 meters, and then it'll drop a little bit further. So we'll go ahead and start off with the Velox. Right here, you can kind of see the attachment layout there. We'll go into the firing range. This is the burst pistol. So this is kind of like a good secondary for you to have. Like I said, the TTK outside of 6 meters isn't particularly good. So you would just balance your playstyle around that. That's more like, hey, maybe you got some shots on somebody, you're going to push, you need to reload, that type of thing. This is not going to be your running gun killer unless you're barrel stuff. Then we have the AK-27, which I think is just more of a fan favorite just because the AK has always had kind of like a special place for Call of Duty. And then when you get into the build, it's kind of built out like this. A lot of these builds are going to have suppressors, the one that doesn't really have a big penalty on it. And then you have a barrel that's usually solving for some kind of range. A lot of times when it was for Warzone, you solve more for bullet velocity because of the ranges you're challenging people. But this game at 700 meters per second bullet velocity, you're going to be fine in most maps and most engagements. Maybe if you're going to the campaign and you're doing long distance stuff on the end game, maybe you have to worry about that. But in general, you're not going to have a problem with that. This is kind of like the go-to underbarrel because it kind of works like the Commando foregrip that we had from MW 2019. It's kind of like covers a lot of different categories in one. And luckily, a lot of these attachments that I'm going to recommend are low-level attachments. And then another nice part about the attachments, if you're ever confused on like what you're trying to solve for, if a gun has high recoil, slow aim down sight, bad bullet velocity, you can actually look at the specific little thing right here. It says recoil control foregrip. If I scroll down here, stable focus hand stop. If I go here, mobility hand stop if you're trying to solve for mobility. So they've actually kind of like added a shorthand notation there if you don't really kind of get the other parts of it. Rear grip, we're handling that first shot, and this is one of those attachments that we're going to put on those guns where maybe they have that initial kick in the beginning, or they're a burst style weapon, which there's multiple that will cover. So that's kind of how that is, and you can see the code there. I'm going to go ahead and put the codes also on the spreadsheet. So if you want to copy and paste, if you have kind of a dual monitor setup, makes it a little bit easier than that. On controller, it's a little bit slow to enter those things in. And then this one you can kind of see, the ELO side is kind of that go-to. If the gun has already pretty good clean iron sights, you're going to go with the clean iron sights, right? But if not, you got to waste an attachment on these optic. I really wish they would remove these walls. They're actually better without these walls because then I could strafe and then the aim assist doesn't break and jitter. But maybe they'll go ahead and remove them because they added them, then removed them, and then added them again. Next set of guns, the M8. Not as broken as it initially was that we early had it in the beta. Still pretty solid. You can get some... Still pretty solid overall. You can kind of see how the build is built out. This is the one where I need to level it a few more levels to 33 on this particular gun. But the first shot recoil is the one I would be using over the recoil springs. I just happen to use that because I need 5 more levels. I kind of mentioned that early on. So if you have that leveled, you're going to want to switch that to the first shot accuracy one, which I get in 5 more levels, which no rush on that end. But you can kind of see how it's built out. And then just the burst. You can get one burst. You just got to make sure you get the headshot in the mix. That it ends up adding the TTK. And it's overall pretty good fast fire rate. You can even hit people at further ranges. And it will get the kill. And on the thing on the left, you can kind of see some of the practical TTKs. Which they've added to the top left there. So if you kind of want to see how that matches with the other one. Like I said, I imagine when we get to the other rifle that I said has the weird TTK, we might get faster TTKs in the firing range. So we got the Maverick, which is another burst. And in this case, it could be one of those ones where you do the first shot recoil control. I don't feel like I notice a difference between that. So I kind of go more towards a movement one. So I could play a little bit more aggressive. But other than that, it's pretty much straightforward built out. So this one is the Maverick. A little bit of a slower burst, but you can see it's still pretty accurate. Pretty lethal at that further range. Then we get to the MXR, which like I said, this one's going to be the weird TTK one. Again, set up like this. I went with the first shot recoil because a lot of the guns, they do have that first shot where it's like, boom, boom. You know what I mean? It's one of those where it's going to cause some trouble. So go here, over here. So you can see the TTK 240, obviously stationary target 350. 240. So that's the part where I was saying the spreadsheet, it kind of has like an algorithm, most predictable TTK, especially with people jumping around. 352 kind of lines up. Get some headshots in the mix, 240. So that's where it falls in line. They're all pretty even. So this is more of a higher skill weapon, in my opinion, because of the fire rate and the headshot requirement. The Ryden 45, kind of see how it is there. And then we have the Ryden here, pretty fast firing gun. It kind of does get a little bit squiggly as SMGs do. They give them a little bit too much recoil to challenge at those further ranges, at least in my opinion. So this one's going to be a little bit more where you're pushing more aggressively and taking advantage of those gunfights. And the TTK you're going to get at closer range. And that brings us to a couple of the guns that I think will probably get nerfed. I've actually used quite a bit of the M15 mod. You can see I prestiged it. And it's one of the only guns that I have in the video that I'm actually using the prestige attachment. This one does a ton of stuff at the cost of bullet velocity, which again is 730. Not going to be a problem. And then when we go ahead and come over here, the thing you would use instead of this is just a normal suppressor. Until you prestige, then you'd switch over because the benefits on this are kind of crazy. Then we got the Dravec, which is kind of built out right here. And it's kind of set up as you can see there. So Dravec, this is the one that I think is a lot of the competitive players are using, that they're going to be using in comp, unless it gets G8 or something like that. Clean iron sights, relatively easy to use. You can see the mobility is pretty good. They don't use suppressors in comp, so they'll probably use another attachment, but overall, you can see kind of how that one works out. And then the M15, which basically everyone's using. Got the first shot accuracy on this one as well, just because I think it helps with that initial shot to stay on target, especially at maybe a target a little bit further away. You get the range there and then they disappear. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys thoughts. See you on the next one. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.